I'm your Rotary Program Chair, and I'm very excited to introduce our program today. It is our Gardens of Hope project. And so please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Michael and Claudia Yakos.
So we're really excited to bring some information on our labor of love, and we do want to thank the club for just always supporting us and supporting the vision that we had for a town, an area that is very near and dear to my heart. And once again, for those of you that are new to the club and haven't sat through the Gardens of Hope presentation, this international project was or came to fruition the year my mom passed away. So hence Hope, her name in Spanish is Esperanza, so Gardens of Hope. It's an opportunity for us to help the most vulnerable in these communities with food and changing their livelihoods and their diets and hopefully impacting their health. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So the main purpose of this project was to provide impoverished families in central Mexico the means and knowledge to grow their own gardens, which can be sustained over time. And with that, we've had the help from the government in Mexico and in these communities. So again, the gardens align with the local governmental goals for nonprofits, allowing us to effectively partner with them on this project. So we are not only helping families, but we're also connecting with the local municipalities. And so what we've seen now that, we're entering, that next phase is the deliverables. Folks are starting to see that, what we are providing, which is not just a garden kit, but we're providing that the full year of the technical support works. So governments in the past provided kits to their citizens, but it's always as a means to we're going to give you this, but in turn, you have to vote for our party. And so the communities were always kind of like what's in it for me, didn't really believe that what we were trying to do with Rotary was just to actually come and help. And so now the governments are very interested in having conversations with us and into how can we partner with you, what can we do. So that's kind of the next phase that's going to be very encouraging for us, is to talk with the local municipalities to see, if they will match the gardens that we're putting in. So for the kits that we provide the families, they receive the full irrigation system, the water filter, the hose, the faucets, stakes for a 75 yard land. It includes organic fertilizer, insecticide, and a nice handbook of recipes to make more with the seeds. Manual with farming and sowing instructions, the hoe, the rake, iron mass, etiologic plague control material, and 45 variety of seeded packets. This kit is about $190, so in pesos, we'll now give and take the pesos doing pretty well. So it's the 32.30 in pesos currently. The technical assistance team of Gardens of Hope is necessary to make the families of the community get together at least twice per month to share experience and learnings. You'll notice a little bit further along in the presentation, we've got some photographs of just that. I think this is why it has been so successful, is that the families are handpicked. And basically what we do with the families is we have our technical assistant team come out and survey the area. We basically let the families know what it is that they need to do in preparation of that. We do have volunteers that will come and help depending on the size of the area or the ground too, that some of it may need a little more help. And then we walk along with them as they plant. We make sure that They're getting together once a month as a community to talk about best practices. What is working for you? What do you need help with? Some people say, hey, we've done this has worked. Some areas have more rodents than others, so they are able to say, hey, you know what, we've noticed this is what we've done. So it's really working out pretty well. And then as they start harvesting, they start those community meetings by swapping recipes, and it's more potluck style, so they're able to come with the meals that are made with the harvest of that season. So these are just a few pictures of our main gentleman that comes out, along with some of the volunteers that come and speak to the families. And here you'll notice the families get together, they visit the gardens, and then they talk about what's happening. He gives them a little bit of feedback on what's going well or what they could do better. Or in some instances, if they have planted too closely, he will basically come and take some time, gather all the families, and help that particular family kind of reseed or replant so that they can be successful. Okay, these are more pictures. Again, same thing, discussions on the planting. And I'm trying to remember, and you probably know more than I do when they are doing the composting and doing all that. So he'll talk a little bit more about that. And I think I'm going to turn it over to you at this point, and he'll just talk to you about the communities we serve.
Okay, so the particular area of focus in central Mexico, the biggest major city is here. It's called Aguascalientes, about 1 million or so people, metro area. And then you can see kind of where that is relative to Guadalajara and Mexico City, which are some of the larger cities I think that we're all familiar with in Mexico. Most of the focus is in the area just north of Aguascalientes. That's about a 40-minute car drive, located around a small little town, probably not size-wise, probably a little smaller than Forest Grove, called Rincon de Ramos. And there are various small communities or towns around that area. So around this area, we have a community, El Bajil, with 7 families supported, El Sacio 2, Mar Negro at 6, and Huerta del Muerto 5. So if you drive around to these various communities, you can pretty much hit them within 15 or 20-minute car ride. So our intent on this table here was just to give a status update for these communities, basically trying to quantify what level of assistance was provided. So, like Claudia showed earlier, they had the kit where you had the irrigation, the seeds, the fertilizer, etc., along with the technical assistance. So for these 4 communities that we just mentioned, that was in that general area around Rincon de Ramos, there were 14
Yeah.
batteries?
Problems.
Okay, I guess we'll have to talk loud. This is a combination of families that have been in the program and those that were recently added. So if you look at the quantity of families, basically for the types of crops that they plant, there are 3 harvest cycles. So down, obviously that area is much further south than where we're located here in Oregon. So they have a longer growing season, more harvest cycles. You can see for sustaining, so as Claudia said, the initial value for the kits are around $190 to sustain families once they're engaged, with the technical assistance and so forth. You figure roughly $100 per family. So if you look at the number of families served in each community times the number of harvests they can generate throughout the growing season, for that investment, it shows what the potential value is, based on some estimates that, for the types of crops they grow, what the value is. So, this is basic assumptions based on the right weather and soil conditions, but it just kind of shows the impact. Not only are these families able to provide food for themselves, but, as an additional benefit, there's the possibility to sell some of this to farmers markets and so forth and provide some additional income.
So these are just some pictures we included of various communities. We have El Bajío and El Sacio, and you can see, if it may be hard for someone to see in the back, but we have the Rotary banner, Club Rotario Aguas Calientes Bosques. So I remember that city I showed, Aguas Calientes, which was the major city. So the Rotary Club of Aguas Calientes is one of the partners on this. So anytime you have international projects, you always want to partner with the local Rotary Club, and Claudia has very good connections to the members in that club. And then here are just some pictures of Mar Negro and Puerto del Muerto. So when this is on, so the first start on March 6, 2021, 40 kits were delivered, and each community had their first meeting. So we're basically going on year 3 of this project, trying to sustain the families that are in the program and trying to bring new families in to provide them the opportunity to grow their own gardens. Initially, the families were selected by the local government social services, so they would recommend who is in need and who we could partner with. And then the technical assistance team, the gentleman that Claudia pointed to earlier, who really has knowledge of gardening and helping to guide the family. So really, the intent from the beginning was kind of like when they say, teach a man to fish, and he'll be able to feed his family for life, versus give him a fish. It's really just technical assistance. If you can ingrain the knowledge of those families, ideally you want it to live on in perpetuity and really allow them to take their gardens and sustain that. So this is just a picture from one of the gardens. I included it in the slide because I thought those 2 girls were particularly cute. That was a nice picture. So the main purpose is to help families feed themselves with the food they produce and diversify their sources of nutrition. We really haven't talked about that, but I think most people can relate. When you go to Mexican restaurants, beans, rice, tortillas, it's kind of a finite menu list. And if you look at what they're growing, I don't think we have the list in here, but you can see in this picture you have radishes. In a few slides more, I think we'll show a picture where they have beets. They're growing broccoli, they're growing Swiss chard. So really a nice diversity of vegetables that helps augment what I would say nutritionally, maybe some of their classic diet that's more dependent on rice and beans. And then finally, as I mentioned earlier, the families can gain extra income by selling some of their produce.
And if I can just interject for a second here on the very last bullet point, the selling of the produce, each community usually has a cattle in their homes, and there are quite a few families that now are in massive production. They've kind of seen like, whoa, we can do this. They're taking some of that harvest and selling it at the mid-harvest. So now, not only are they feeding, they're actually going into like a small business for themselves and selling produce. Yes.
I'm sorry that it was delayed, but I have a question about that. Are these families, are they running into any kind of bureaucratic problem getting the right permits and stuff to sell from the, okay.
No, because it's in such a small scale still. It's definitely, it's kind of like your little farmer's market here, where they can set up. In Mexico, a lot of times, they can operate just out of their home and sell things. So no, we're still kind of on a smaller scale. We'll talk a little bit next about the girls' home and plans that they have, because that's, I think, where you'll run into more of that. But because in Mexico, it really is, it's one of those, because Rotary Bosques, Rotary Club is definitely so involved with this girls' home. They have the ability to have a lot of their produce sold at like the bigger, like the state fairs and things of that nature. So it's almost because of Rotary that they're able to do these things. But normally, to answer your question, there would be a lot of red tape that needs to happen.
So I guess you're kind of answering my next follow-up question is as they scale up, is the Rotary Club in country in a position to assist cutting the red tape? Because that's what Shelterbox finds, is that when we go into countries, we need the Rotary clubs to help maneuver through all the governmental, the bite, as well as the red tape, legit and not legit
Yes.
stuff.
That's 100% correct. That's sadly how it is. And I think because of the proven results that they're seeing with our gardens and the municipalities and their government, local governments wanting to invest with us, we'll hopefully not see a lot of that with these families.
So shifting gears a little bit, we just wanted to include another example. So the prior pictures we showed were around Rincon de Ramos, basically going out to to families that have a small property with land and, encourage them to plant gardens. This effort here with the girls' home of Librada Orozco was in partnership with the Rotary Club of Aguas Calientes. They were already tied into helping. And what this is basically a girls' home for what I would say abused young girls. A lot of times have small children, and they need a place to go. So in October 2021, when Claudia and I were down there, we did go to the girls' home with some of the members from the Rotary Club of Aguas Calientes, and wanted to figure out how could we take this project and help them. This particular girls' home, if you imagine, I would estimate I'm guessing maybe about a 5-acre property, more or less, and it's all fenced in, and the land was not utilized, right? They had a building there where they lived, and the majority of that 5-7 acres, whatever it was effectively unused, uncultivated. So we discussed with them, hey, would you like for us to partner with you to set up a garden that you could help not only feed the girls in the girls' home, but also provide some additional revenue. And this is kind of the group that went there. You see Claudia and I here, and at that point in time, 3 years ago, this was the president of the Rotary Club of Aguas Calientes and his wife, who was very passionate about supporting this particular charitable cause. So this is what it looked like initially. Like I said, you could kind of see the property with it fenced in, and most of the property just kind of looked like that, right? It was just bare ground, and you can see here the tractor starting to plow through the gardens.
A lot of rock. I mean, it was incredible. And with all of the collaboration, the network, the leveraging of the Rotary Club, we were able to get John Deere from Aguascalientes to come and help us get all of this land ready for them to actually get the gardens going. The Rotary Club here in Forest Grove, with the donation, was very actively wanting. We were very actively wanting the Club of Aguascalientes to also, support us and basically match us. And so you're going to now start to see the fruits of the labor going into year 2.
So this slide, or this picture here, is just before you saw the before, this is the after. So you can see after the gardens were planted, they're growing here. As I mentioned earlier, you see some beets there, different varieties. I think you might have some chard there. So a lot of different variety. Like I said, to help this particular girls' home not only feed their people, but less revenue. That's Tim.
Just curious about their growing season, Mike. Is it similar to what we have here? Do they have multiple seasons?
It's longer. As we said earlier, they have about 3 harvests. When I asked somebody who was in the know, and this was in my broken Spanish, so if I haven't, I apologize, but my recollection was it probably starts in around March, and then maybe October, November, thereabouts, and then you kind of go through several cycles. And I think they're used to that down there too, because if you look at the beans and other crops, it's very similar. And them obviously being further south, the sunrise, sunset, you don't have quite the variation that you have up here.
What's the elevation there? Do you know?
It's
That's right.
It's not super high. I would guess maybe 500 thereabouts feet, not too far away from sea level. As you can kind of tell there, it's more arid than it is here, and the soil. Just looking at it, it looks a little more sandy and maybe not as rich. So I remember asking somebody, because one of the things I was curious about is, did they have to augment the soil? And as mentioned earlier, they have compost and that sort of thing. But what they told me was, by and large, they don't. The soil is fertile enough to support these, maybe with just some compost and other fertilizers.
And then irrigation, is that something they don't have to worry about because they get rainfall?
It's part of the kit. So in the picture of the kit that was
Right.
shown earlier, they have that hose. So the irrigation comes with it.
Sure.
And I think even in some of these small families, a lot of these small families had wells on their property. So water was actually not a problem as long as you have the hose where you can run the irrigation to the gardens.
For about 65 to 75 square feet, is that right? That kit?
Yeah, 72.
Okay, yeah.
I was just curious, do they have an ag university like OSU near this place that we could collaborate with and have those ag students come and work with these gardens and, really kind of put them on steroids
Yes, so.
in a positive way?
So yes, in Tepesana, which is the newest of the communities that we're in, they actually have a satellite, Universidad de Aguascalientes satellite with the students from the agriculture, and that's kind of exactly what our team wants to do. Is they want to ensure that we have partnerships, because as this grows on a bigger scale, our small team can't handle all of that. So yes,
Yeah.
you're spot on.
I just flipped this to the next slide with the Rotaract. These were from the University of
Yes, so this Rotaract, especially in this home, the young ladies, there aren't very many, so this was a lot of five gardens, and you can imagine how huge that is. And so we started noticing that, the excitement was starting to kind of die down, and so we recognized that something needed to happen. So the home itself hired someone to help, but then this is where we brought in our Rotaract club from Aguascalientes, and so the Rotaract club is consistently helping to come in and help with this particular project with the girls' home.
And this is just another slide of the girls' home. You can see one of the harvests there. I think those look like squash, perhaps. But Tim was asking about the irrigation system, so you can see kind of the hoses there and how you have the drip line for all the roads. So you basically, that's part of the deal for this area, given the lack of rainfall, to make sure that irrigation is set up prior to planting. And then the third year, kit and assistance. So as mentioned, we're in year 3. We have around 20 families in the communities around Rincon de Ramos. Basically keep working their gardens with help from their technical assistance team. And I know ultimately the goal would be, after several years where they get the hang of it, they may no longer need the technical assistance. They're basically on their own, and you've taught a family how to sustain themselves for a period of time.
So in this, I think it was the 8th slide, we showed the different communities, and we showed numbers of who is continuing on. This doesn't include the 20 families in this area, so we have quite a few families that we're still helping with the supplementation of a smaller kit, which basically means some seeds, and if they need like irrigation things, and that will come in with that kit. But like Mike said, right now what we're starting to see and what we're trying to build are mentors, are folks who, hey, after 2 years, we know what to do. We're ready to come and help other families, and you're starting to see that as promoters in Spanish, promotores. And they're like our little promoters on the ground that can go and supervise, basically, so that it really helps to gain those skills and best practices over to our newer families.
So this slide here, we just have a couple more photos of some of the gardens in and around the area. But these few slides will talk about some communities in Tepesela, which again is kind of around the same general area. 20 new gardens were recently established, so we thank everybody for their generous contribution to this effort. And this is in addition to the 40 families that were from the first and second year in two communities, thanks to the SB Collective, the Rotary Club of Forest Grove, and participation from the municipality of Tepesela.
Yes, Virginia.
I have a question. In the United States, families who are impoverished typically also have no access to land, like they're living in low-income apartments and things like that. How does the land access work here?
So the majority of the families have spaces, but those that don't have been creative in that they'll find a family member who has an area, and then they're able to plant things there. We haven't yet gotten to a place where we have needed to ask, the community or the city to give us a space, but that's not to say that it couldn't happen.
So we just have a couple more slides here with some additional photos. We thought these were pretty good because you get to see the garden in full bloom with, basically the crops ready to be harvested.
And one thing, just quickly on the Besara, that is the newest community. This is the one, they have a new mayor. She's coming into her first year, and she is fantastic, dynamic. She is just super on board. So she basically said, whatever you come in and do, we'll match it. So that's what we want to see, is we want to grow there a little bit more because that's the closest to that university satellite, so that we could bring in the agriculture students, to do a lot of the heavy lifting for us. And the Rotary Club also has a very, from Aguascalientes, has great connections and partnerships with that particular mayor. So just really feel like that's a really great use of our investment because we could do a lot more there with the support, and we feel like that can really establish, a potential global grant in that area.
And as mentioned before, we included this slide here, so you can see the fence around the garden. Certain areas, they have problems with critters, so that's part of the assistance, right? To make sure if that's the case, you can fence around the garden area so the varmints don't take their produce.
And you get families that get pretty creative, like this one here. They have such a great garden. This is just going into a next harvest, but they create their own little stakes with the names of their, it's just real. They take such pride.
Ownership.
Oh, it is incredible to see, and every time you go, they have fresh water of something, or they always want to feed you, and it's just, they're so grateful. They're so grateful for what we're doing. Yeah, so as we project forward, in a way, I'm really thankful that we didn't come on in right away with the global grant. Initially, I get really excited and I think we could do it, and then I started going through the process with the International District Projects Group and worked with Stu Martin, and actually have done quite a bit of the legwork, but I noticed early on that to do it well and to be intentional, we really needed to have a few years under our belt to kind of really have that the data for this global grant. So the global grant that we would love to at some point get involved in is minimum 400 families, 400 gardens. The great thing though is in sharing this with other clubs, we're for the first year now going to send out letters to the clubs in the district to ask for partnerships, for funding, so that the club is so amazing and you all donate $4,000 from, or to the international projects. From that, we write a district grant for $2,000. And then on top of that, this club is wonderful in that during the ask every year, we receive additional funding. So we've received a total in the last 2 years of $1,400. That goes a long way, so we appreciate that. So we continue to recruit volunteers out in Mexico. And then we've got boots on ground in Mexico. We've got a Rotary Club member that lives in Mexico that is part of our club. But she is that tight knit rope that's binding us together. She attends all of their meetings, and so that's what keeps the two clubs, in constant contact. So with that, we just want to say thank you. Open it up for any questions that you might have. That we'd love to answer.
When's the next trip to Mexico?
So we were hoping to do an October trip. That was a little bit too soon, but we'd love to do something in April. And we say April because March is when we get started with the planting, and I think by mid-April you actually start seeing some growth, so that way the group that would like to come with us on this trip can actually start to see, the family's reactions and help, join the family as they tour us, through what is being planted. So we're looking at April. We'll get something together. I know that Pamela Jean is ready to go. So
Listo.
yes.
You said this program started, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yes, we're entering the 3rd year.
Okay. Well, so first off, amazing, like from ideation to implementation, adoption to our return on the investment is phenomenal. So my question would be, what would it take to replicate that program so that perhaps we could have impact on local families that are experiencing the food insecurity and nutritional deficiency? I'm sure we have that here locally too. This is, so successful. What would it take for us to take that on here locally and have an impact?
I'd say it's as easy as saying, hey, there's, I've thought about this, I know that, St. Anthony's has an area, and I always think like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to have like community gardens? Like, why couldn't that be a thing? I think it's very easily duplicatable. I think it's just a matter of identifying and getting the committee together and saying, we want to do this too, creating the kits and basically making it happen. I think for this, the success really is in the consistency, and it's showing up with the families to ensure that we establish that consistency and habits are built.
I think we should have something like that in Forest Grove.
Yeah, there are. Pacific has things.
Pacific has it, and Ellen is in charge of it.
Pacific
Yeah.
does well.
Has a community garden that they work with. As Ellen used to teach here.
We don't have
as-
it.
Well,
Street
they
is-
took the garden, but they gave them new ground over.
But it's not a community garden anymore.
Yeah, the senior center has something, in their area. So I
I
mean,
just think the
it's-
idea is there.
The idea, so the idea is there, and these kits can very easily be, created. So, yes. Other than that, we're just, again, can't thank you enough for making this a priority. I think that, for us, the international projects were the why, aside from the local community things that we do, but that really just kind of called us. And I'm definitely not a gardener, so it's really interesting that this is kind of where I landed, so I've learned a lot and grown a lot, and so, yeah.
We're proud of you guys. Good
Yes,
job.
thank you.